Good morning and welcome to today's webinar on AutoCAD Civil 3D 2012. We're going to talk about figures and features. We're going to bang through a couple of quick slides here, and here's how you get in touch with us. You've found us already on cadpilot.com. You can always give me a call at 1-800-584-1506. A couple of handy dandy email addresses there. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Ken Shillman. I'm the president of More Competency. Hey, we've got Instant On Basic for 2012. It's part of our whole integrated solution. It's our seat product. Basically, it's 195 bucks. Makes Civil 3D run out of the box. Includes a couple of thousand styles, actually, and functional working project management, ready to run templates. Plots right out of the box actually makes Civil 3D work, as we'll see today. On top of that, we have a symbol set of additional point style blocks and all that stuff that you can add to it. And the jump kit for Civil 3D 2012 is going to have thousands more styles. There are approximately 5,000 styles, prototype styles in the jump kit. The whole integrated solution all works together, lets you assemble and build templates to do just about any single task you can imagine in almost any format you can imagine inside Civil 3D, and everything's in the jump kit's all broken up into by feature drawings, and now some of them are even task based. So, I need these kind of things for this kind of DOT and these kind of things for this kind of city, so you can put together templates that actually function in Civil 3D and work without spending years and hours and months trying to make Civil 3D work for you. Pretty cool stuff. Hey, and we don't forget your AutoCAD folks. There are a lot of people who, fix cleanup drawings, gotta take the output and dumb it down to AutoCAD afterwards. And we have a blocks only product, so every single symbol, just about from APWA, bunch of DOT standards, everything from LDT is pretty much all clean and standardized, runs in Civil 3D, runs in LT in multiple versions. And so, hey, for 95 bucks for a site license, simply ridiculous productivity. You can make yourself up just about any tool palette in a couple of seconds. So we're here to talk about figures and feature lines in Civil 3D, and there's no way we can talk about this stuff unless we talk about points. I'm sorry. This is all one big, giant, confusing mishmash. And we got COCO points and survey figures and Civil 3D feature lines, and they're all muckied into this new mess that we all have to deal with. And the key thing to remember, we got to remember about Civil 3D is that Civil 3D, it's all about the data. In AutoCAD, it was all about your drawing and what you saw on the screen. Remember, in Civil 3D, it's all about the data. And if we keep that first and foremost in our heads, things start making a little more sense, I trust. And we're going to try to debug some of this stuff for you today. Kind of take it as slow and simple as is possible for the tench man to do, but we're going to do that. Okay, so if we were in LDT, point import in Civil 3D looks so easy, but is it? Okay, well, let's, hammer at that right away. I'm going to switch this drawing. Okay, and I've only done a couple of things here. And I've done some really important, even now, already done some important setup stuff inside Civil 3D. But we got a drawing here, and we're going to go over the settings tab. This is the stuff that ships with Civil 3D. And you get a total of 24 point styles, one description key set that includes a total of 3 keys. Okay, and you're supposed to produce drawings with that. If I import a point file into this thing, I will get a horrific mess that will get me almost nowhere. I will spend day after day making stuff to make stuff work. And so I'm not even going to show you this. This is so bad. All right, so I started another drawing here. So we'll go to the prospector here, and we'll switch back to this one. And this is an example of the 12 template. Just started straight out of the box. And in terms of some of those same little things, point styles. Hey, 350 of them plus. Okay, this one actually thinned down the description key sets just to make it a little less confusing for this presentation, and you get a couple of them in here. But each one of them contains, here's just the lines only, there are 150 effectively line styles in here. And take a look at this, 317 keys, right? In the simplest product we make, you already got just about most of the stuff covered that you're probably going to have to deal with on a daily basis. And okay, so we've done that much. We've got a template, something critical to your success in Civil 3D. And the Instant Basic template comes standardized stuff. And if you want to find out what those standards are, you can log into the website. You got to sign up and log in, go to the downloads page, and the 12 documentation is already up there in PDF format. There for all comers. Anybody wants to get it, doesn't cost you a thing. Find out how the naming conventions work, how the whole jump works, and you'll see what the depth of our documentation is like, which most people say is just like outrageous. You should charge for this. We don't. Okay, so let's import a Phonic file. I mean, this would be typical stuff we do. We got a lot of ways that we can do this, right? And, basically at the Kogo thing, right? Oh my God, how do I do this? Well, I got points, and I'm going to hop over here to the modify tab, and there's a points, and yeah, there's even a points menu here, and there's import points. Okay, I found it. Okay, now this stuff looks pretty much like even LDT work. There's no rocket science here. And we're going to, go out and add a file. I'm going to take this guy. And here's one of the sneaky things. I got this from the surveyor. I don't know what the heck's in here, right? Well, we're in Windows 7, right? So we can right-click on that guy and open that puppy with Notepad. Even inside the open box inside of Civil 3D. Oh, this is scary. And I could see that, hey, it looks like point numbers. I know my coordinate system, so that's all that long. It's 8 digits of precision, right? 3 digits of elevation, and a whole bunch of keys here. Okay, so we can see we got a big, huge file. Okay, that looks like point number, northing, easting, elevation, description. Okay, that was pretty cool. All right, so, don't forget that you got access to all kinds of tools here. All right, so we're going to bring this guy in. And, now we got choices here. We know it's PNEZD, but we can also bring it out without the description. Well, what's that going to do? Well, this is an interesting little test. Let's just bring them in without the descriptions and see what the results are, right? Civil 3D will chug away, and we'll go up to the prospector, and now we have this giant points collection. And we got a bunch of points, and you will see that we have no raw descriptions. Okay, so we just got NEZ points, and we can actually zoom to those puppies, and we will see that they all look like little teeny X's. Okay, based on your command settings, and there are command settings that set this stuff up, what's the default way things look like. But because Civil 3D employs this idea of style to everything, we got to remember that every single point is always controlled by this thing called point groups. And so, we got a bunch of point groups. Here's some of the new point groups, and some of those hopefully make a little bit of sense. New naming convention for point groups in the new jump, right? And we're going to update this. And we'll see that because we had no descriptions, nothing fell into any of those piles. So everything is being controlled by what's going on in my all points group. And it has a couple of properties, and it says, oh, okay, put some point style called vPoint. okay, which happens to be a relative scaling point, and I can go out and take a look at that. You can see this. This is, relative to the screen size, so I can zoom in and out, kind of handy, basic stuff, and a point label style. And the jump's got just about everything under the sun, and, doesn't really matter since we don't have a description. So I'm just going to use a stack with a point number and the elevation and slam all these guys in here. Now, this isn't a very useful file at this point, but I can do a couple of things with this thing. I can immediately build the surface, so we could do that. We're going to just do a gross undo. So not having the descriptions means that pretty much now we're down to the simplest little point objects that we could possibly have without not much information happening. Just wanted to kind of review what's going on there. Okay, so let's go back to our import point event. Civil 3D is pretty graceful about removing all that stuff, not blowing up on you. And did all my points disappear? Did I get all the way back? Yeah, there you go. Okay, so all my points disappeared. Nothing on my sleeve. Control A, nothing in my drawing. Trust me. All right, so let's go back and do the same thing again. Import point events. Okay, go back, grab our same file. And notice I got a couple other ones up here, and we'll come back and look at those in a bit too. Okay, and go to PNEZ format. Okay, you can set this up so, the typical formats, you can turn it on and say, I've already selected a few here, okay, and say, I only want these ones, so don't get confused. A couple of things, not in CSV format, which we happen to be using, but you can have coordinate information. It could come from a gun with the coordinate system that it was shot in, and datum adjustments and those sort of things. Beware of these advanced options. In Civil 3D, the default template says do elevation adjustment if possible. For some reason, it's been there for a while, and all of a sudden, wait a minute, it can interpret something in your file, and everything is somewhere where you didn't expect it. So just one of those little things to watch out for. We're going to pour this file in again, and Civil 3D sucks this puppy up. And now you see my point groups. I left it open. You will see things matched. Okay, so we need to, first thing, let's zoom over there so we can see what's going on. Oh, whoa, all kinds of stuff happened. Okay, the magic of description keys. Bang, that's description keys. Taking symbology, getting symbology, all done based on a set of keys. And most of us have been doing this for a while, so it's not that really marvelous, but it is pretty cool. Okay, so we're going to update the point groups. Nothing much changes except for you saw some of the stuff just like vanished and disappeared because the keys had no point objects there. So we're going to go down to our points here, which is at the bottom of the stack. Now the point groups have specific stuff in them, and they also, as you can see, have an order. And this order is very important. It says, what do you want it to look like if it wasn't told what to look like before? And description keys do a lot of that before activity. For a description key to function, there must be a COGO point or a point feature in your drawing. The other thing that's important to recognize in terms of Civil 3D is there is no such thing as a point. You can do a few things to the points here. We can zoom in on them and let's find a rotatable one. And there's some new cool stuff. You can grab it. And if we right click, there's things that we can do. If we actually grab it, right, you can rotate the label, okay, and do some other real cool things. So you've got to massage things a little bit. That got a little bit easier in 12. They did some nice stuff. Okay, so new stuff in 12 in terms of rotating the labels, which we don't have on right now. Okay, and notice we had a bunch of other points. Well, here's a point. It's getting some sort of a symbol from some way. It looks like a driveway shot of some sort. Okay, depending what the keys mean to you, right? There's a little driveway, a couple of driveway shots in there, and they got this big gross X being applied to them. So all these symbols here come in my settings by the description keys, what the keys say, and this too has an order. So this pile of keys, which happens to be all the line work keys, we're going to go take a look at them, so don't panic yet. All the line work keys, right, with basic descriptions, right, is processed first. It looks for matches up here before it goes to this second pile. And you can have multiple piles. In fact, the true templates actually have 4 or 5 piles in them. Okay, so you get different choices, and that can be very useful. I just want the points, and I don't want all the little symbols. I want the points with big, huge, long descriptions. I want the points with exactly what the surveyor said. I want, there's a bunch of different things that we can do with this description key set, right? And this ability to move around the stack order and change it. Okay, I just want to point out that property is really important. Let's take a look at some of the keys. Line keys, we'll come back to those because they relate a little more to figures, which we're going to get out. And here are the point keys. And they look a bit like the description keys, that were in LDT for years and years, but subtle stuff has changed. And by the way, if you've got a set of keys, you can just import, make a bunch of points with your keys, okay, with your existing keys in an empty LDT project, and just, put some, throw them down on a grid, throw all the points in there, make sure you get every single one with every single symbol. And if you import this into a raw drawing, right, from a Civil 3D project, it will actually attempt to make styles that emulate a little bit about what your description keys are. So that's still possible to do. It's still buried away in Civil 3D, right? Still works. But we got a whole set of keys, and sometimes we apply a style, okay? And this is what the symbol looks like. And sometimes we can apply a format. We can do some really interesting things with formats. Like if we go down to trees, we could scale things and rotate things and do all kinds of cool things with what's going on in the description commands, right? And we can also layer sort where the point itself manifests the symbol, so to speak. And the jump works on the principle that the point styles float. Okay, so I'm sticking, my two arrow symbol, right? And there's a style here attached, and we'll just expand this. And so you can see we got, basic pavement stuff, all kinds of stuff in here that wasn't in the last couple of jumps, lots more stuff even in Instant on Basic than was ever there before. As you can see, we get, symbols everywhere, scale trees all over the place, different kinds of trees, by the way. Okay, so we got different kinds of trees, different kinds of tree symbols, all NCS compliant in terms of what those things look like. So we got the points. Other thing, the basic bottom line here is most of the time we're also going to have to make a surface. So let's make a surface. Okay, and we need to do that in Prospector, make a new feature here, right? And we want to make a surface, and we're going to create a surface. And it's just going to be a regular tin surface. There are other kinds of surfaces? Oh yeah, all kinds of other surfaces. So we're going to make a tin surface, and we're going to give it a name, and we really do care, and we're just going to call this tan EG. So it's going to be my first crack at my existing ground. Probably, want to document what you do in terms of a surface in particular. You could be throwing stuff in it, start surface. And I got a couple of back-end reasons for doing this, all right? And we're going to show it as contours. I don't think that's the best way to show the surface actually while we're debugging it, but we're going to start there, and that's okay. We can change that anytime we want. And now we want to add those points that we got here and make that surface. Pretty idiot simple stuff. You know, this is just like the TME, right? Just buried away. Well, we got a definition, just like the TME has, right? Terrain Model Explorer, for those of you who don't remember. Okay, and we could add point groups. So I could add my all point group, but hey, I can be really sneaky here and add that point file in, the same one I used before. And take that guy and stick that in here, and now we could say, hey, that's PNEZ. We don't need the descriptions in there, and we're connected up that way, and it will just dump everything by Northern Using into my surface model. Okay, cool, right? And instantly I got a surface. Not too pretty a surface yet, but I instantly got a surface. And if I needed to, one of the things we're talking about is I don't got any line work here. I don't have any break lines. Okay, my file didn't have any. I'm just working with a point file. I can't do much with this. Okay, so one of the things I need to do here is go to my point groups, and I really want all those points to display. Every single one. I can play with stuff. Let's get the road stuff, okay? And we'll go to the properties, and I'm purposely going to skip the raw description matching page, okay? And as you can see, it has nothing assigned to all those points and no label style. Well, I'd like to have, you know, something with a cross. How about that? That works for me. And I'd certainly like to see the raw descriptions only. That'll work for me. Okay, applied to every single point in there. Okay, and now I just got roadway points. Okay, and that was a collection based on descriptions. Let's go take a look at that. And this is, you know, related to the keys is this idea of the description matching and grouping them all together. They're kind of an interrelated process, and you'll notice, you know, the syntax that we employ, right? So we're looking for certain line codes. Okay, anything with a pound sign says I'm looking for something with numbers in it, and I'm looking for anything after that number. So you can do some fairly sophisticated matching rules, right, in your raw descriptions. And one of the little tricks I always like to point out is, you know, how do you get your point groups around? Well, one of the easy ways is you just start a notepad file and just copy the string, right, and make the point group right from this copied string, rather than going up here and picking all the little blocks or going over here to the overrides tab or the query builder and do something really mechanical. You can actually, from a notepad file, build extremely complex descriptions, right, that collect all the points for you. So we got roadway stuff. You know, I'm really interested in my top back of curb shots. Okay, and you know, we could use the P-line command. Okay, and that works okay. I'll be honest, and then you could convert them into something break line wise. But we also have this thing inside Civil 3D, right, called a feature line. And this is like 3D polylines on steroids. Feature lines got a couple of unique aspects to them that make them very different from old 3D LDT polylines, right? And they're more intelligent, and I like to say a lot more flexible. So we can make a feature line. And one thing that is very different about feature lines is that they're always, like points, collected together in something that we call a site. And so sites allow things to talk to one another or not, which is actually the more important thing here. And, you know, we can create a new site, and let's just, you know, name this site survey, and survey feature lines to produce line work, because we're doing the same thing, and break lines. So we can do the same thing if you got to manually draw that stuff together. It's got some geometry stuff, so you can flatten this in the site geometry, by the way, right? Not that you want to until you want to output it. Okay, and feature lines have a couple other things. They can be named, so you can name them, curb 1, curb 2, cool. Okay, you can rename them. Okay, they also have style, and you could say, no, I don't want to have style. So you can make a feature line that doesn't have style, but what they're not telling you here is that crossing ones, right, are weighted by the styles that you employ. And every site parcel actually has a priority for these. So usually a good idea that, hey, we want them to look like something. And once again, it's Civil 3D, so we can go out and take a look at what we're doing. Okay, so, this is a corridor output feature line style, actually, and it will throw everything to a layer called C-road line. It uses X markers, and, this is an example of the documentation since jump. It tells you pretty much what's going on here. Okay, well, that's not really what I want to use, so we'll take a grading curve. Okay, that'll probably be a little bit closer. It might be throwing stuff to different layers, but I can move them around. Okay. All right. So we're going to take a grading curve and we're going to throw them on the V break line layer. Okay. So they're actually making stuff on one layer and being displayed on another layer. Okay. Another strangeness inside Civil 3D. All right. And we're going to create. Now I got a number of tools. It'll take any point that I want, okay, on the screen. I can, pick point numbers. I got this transparent commands, right? Okay, so I can use transparent commands to pick point objects. And knowing the POs and the bearing distance and azimuths and all that kind of things are really handy inside Civil 3D. So I encourage you to spend a little time and learn everything that's in the transparent toolbar. So let's just give an example, and we're going to do it by picking a point object. And so I can zoom in here and start my feature line right there, and it sucks up the elevation right from the feature line. So I can just hit the space bar and grab the next one, computes the grade for me, right? Okay, between the two, sucks it up, and I'm still there, and I'll accept that grade. Okay, and once again, I'm still inside that transparent command, so I can continue to, pick away here and zoom and pan, hit my space bar, and do what I need to do, right, to construct my feature line. Pretty easy stuff. I'm going to get out because I can make this even easier. We're inside AutoCAD. What am I doing? There are other things I could do. So I'm going to get out of that. Grab the point object command. I'm going to go down to my OSNAP tab. I'm still inside my command and make sure that nodes are on, right? Okay, so I know this is a Pogo point object. It's got a node with elevation, right, for those because the style I'm employing all use elevation-based nodes. Okay, so I can pick that guy, right? Once again, I get the same thing. You'll see it does have elevation. If I display the elevation in my little labels, right, I could validate that it is still pulling out the right elevation. Okay, and we'll grab this guy, and we'll grab that guy. And now since the feature line, I can, transit to an arc and grab that guy and grab that guy. And I can actually end here. I can transit back to a line, zoom and pan and continue and do this whole very boring process of creating a feature line. And since it's a feature line, it's got three-dimensional elevation and feature line editing. There's a whole bunch of stuff in here. Okay, when we grab an object in Civil 3D, we get that green ribbon icon, gives us tools to do a whole bunch of things, and there are a couple of key ones here, and we're going to see these over with figures too. And so whenever you see these two menus, right, recognize, oh, feature line, feature line. All right, so one's the Edit Geometry tab, which we actually have up right now. I can turn it off. There it goes. Okay, turn it on. There's the Edit Geometry tab. This has got some really cool stuff in it. Allows you to do things like, ooh, I draw it in the wrong direction. Sometimes it makes a difference. Notice that these tools, right, I'm just picking on reverse here. It will reverse the direction of a feature line, a survey figure, a parcel, a polyline, or a 3D polyline. So these Edit Geometry tools also work for stuff you drew by hand using an old Lisp routine. So pay attention. Okay, couple of really other things in here. There's weeding in here. You can build stepped offsets. So we shot the back of curb here. We need to make the front of curb and the flow line since it's a standard street. So we can do the stepped offset stuff. I've demonstrated that stuff a ton of times, so I'm not going to do it today. But to make a fulfilled, more proper surface, I'd have to do that kind of stuff. Okay, we'll show a couple of key little things. Maybe, you know, excuse me, maybe the guy shot okay, but I'd really like to thicken this up a little bit. Okay, so you can manually insert PIs, okay, and use nearest, and throw a few more points into my feature line around my arcs and those sorts of things. You can also insert PIs, and you can see, you can, go anywhere. It will let you slap one anywhere you want. So what it's going to do if you use nearest here, if I used a nearest OSNAP, is just interpolate. Right? Standard engineering practice, it'll interpolate between the two other ones and let you slam it in there. You can also make adjustments. But down at the command line, right, we could do incrementals. And, I would like to, throw them every 2 feet. I'm doing this as an example. And it will throw a ton of them all at once. Okay, so I can hyper densify my feature line in a second. Okay, and now I have a much more complicated feature line. I really like to did that so I could demonstrate weeding. So you can also say, oops, that was not really what I really meant to do. Could you pull them out to every 10 feet? Okay, and it will pull out 91 of 143. Notice it's not yanking them out on my curve. Okay, so a couple of little tricks here with feature lines. If you understand the weeding and grading factors, which I'm not going to go into those deep weeds at this moment, you can do some really interesting things here. Notice I can densify my curves by adding above what I want and ripping it back down. Okay, and maybe we want to go down to 15 feet. Okay, and it will give you a count of what it's going to pull out. Okay. Right, all in one shot, so I can, densify, right, by using a two-step process, get a very nice feature line that produces a better surface, perhaps, than the original data had. Did we change anything in the data? Yes. Okay, we are, however, using standard engineering practice, just interpolating what was going on, and that will produce cleaner surfaces that print better, give you better contours. Okay, so feature lines play a key part in surface construction. If I had nothing but the points and had to draw them, then I could draw them this way. Yuck. Who thought of this? Okay, so let's get rid of that guy. Okay, how do we get rid of all these points? Well, we can undo here, but we also can get rid of the points another way, which is simply grab the point collection, go to the top of my pile here, and go to the bottom of my pile, grab them all, hit delete, and get rid of all the points. right? And now I have no points. And notice my point groups say, hey, update me. And one thing, whenever we bring points in and out, okay, you got to remember to go to the point groups and update because it will lie to you. Notice my surface didn't disappear. Why? Because I was a smart guy and I built my surface directly connected to the file. Okay, so now we're going to go look at figures and all that mystery, which is a totally separate process from description keys. I'm going to hop back to my slideshow. And in the old days, LDT made AutoCAD primitives and layers, you shot stuff to layers. In Civil 3D, we're using style controlled basis of what things look like, and we're creating Civil 3D features, which are look, and when you blow them up, they might turn into AutoCAD stuff, but they're got intelligence and flexibility built into them, and they talk to one another, and they know about each other's existence, and they track changes and do all kinds of stuff. For points, the symbols are all wrappered. The block is actually wrappered in a point style so that when I change scales and change how my view is, everything still turns out pretty. And I don't have to spend a ton of time making 50 scale drawings and 10 scale drawings for different kinds of the symbols and the labels and all that stuff are annotatively dynamic. Real cool stuff, right? And remember that point groups, right, are one of the best ways to manage points and how they look and how they're labeled and all that kind of stuff. Typically, the description keys are going to do the absolute symbols that you got to have, and that's going to come from the description keys. And then, you're going to generalize what the other points look like with the point groups. Typically, easiest thing to do. A couple of tricks here. If you're going to use the points to annotate a site map or sit underneath things, you're going to want to generate the points themselves in a completely separate drawing or drawings to use as XREFs. The other quick and dirty way to do that is actually generate from that drawing a DWF, a DWF file, right, which you can plot to, and use that as an image, as an XREF. So an IREF, so to speak, is one of the better ways to get all that printed out and track it and redline it and make sure it all turns out well. So description keys and figures, a couple of things. One, it's two completely separate processes. Doesn't look like it, didn't used to be. In Civil 3D, it really is completely two separate processes. Description keys don't require a survey database. They can apply to any point feature that exists, and they can be reapplied. I can change my description key that is current and reapply it to any point groups I want. So you will notice in point groups, there's a tool, apply point groups, apply description keys. So you can change up what you got. And once again, I pointed out the description key stack. Figures are directly connected to the survey data back there, and they require an open, a survey database to update to, one that's open, read-only or read-write. And they go through a line work processing routine, okay? And in terms of figures, there are a whole bunch of current things that really matter, okay? Couple other things I want to point out. Description keys employ a very complex string interpreter, meaning that character by character, each individual character is looked at to see if it's really a wildcard. And so in the description key group, and I'll give you an example from the jump, and we'll take a look at a couple of keys here real quick, not to belabor this point. So in the settings tab, we want to go to points. We can look at a couple of keys here, and you'll see things like manholes, I think. Okay, here, vaults. Okay, so vaults have this huge long list of characters that are not recognized to follow the VL main code. It's called the NOT code, right? And it uses a very, don't look if it's one of these, ignore me, this code, and that means it's going to find, that this is a gas valve. That's also a gas valve, okay? But it still will let you match this one, okay? So you can do fairly sophisticated things in terms of what you do, because description keys look at things every single character at a time in their matches, and you can use very complex wildcard matching stuff inside a description key. Figures, on the other hand, are much dumber. The string interpreter is pretty simple. It matches the whole string and looks for a limited list of last character, pretty much, wildcard matches. Okay, so in terms of line work, we're matching the whole string. When we're talking about description keys, we can be matching parts of the string. Okay, and the interpreters could be better, worse, but they pretty much work the way they did before. They're just applied in a more sophisticated way inside of Civil 3D. And we showed you a couple of import methods, right? We're going to show you another import method right now. We did point files, okay, but given you got a point file from the surveying organization, and here's my XYZ file, and that's what you get, okay, you can still make figures out of it. Really? Okay, so while we're in Civil 3D, if I've got a point file and I've got a description key set, and okay, that's going to make the points and all that kind of stuff. But what I really like to do is generate some figures while I do that. Okay, figures. I need survey. Okay, so hop over to survey. Now, survey's got Civil 3D's got a bunch of setup, and we did some of it. The folder that you're working on, by the way, over here in the prospector, where your data shortcuts are pointed to, pretty important thing. You want to make sure you know where you're working. Survey will use that same folder here for a folder location, or you can set it somewhere else. And since most of the time survey organizations want to bury their data away so that the design guys don't change it, right, we're set down to a subfolder inside our project. So survey is looking here and reading and writing for text files and those sorts of things down in this location and not in the root of my project. Okay, all right, okay, and notice, hey, here's the UDS compliant jump project that actually works, right? And categorizes and separates drawings by Civil 3D features, so it's easier to keep track of the stuff and what's what and where's things pointing to and all that kind of thing, is part of a Civil 3D project. That's important stuff. Okay, so we needed to get some points in here. We want to make figures out of them. And we got a folder that we got to check, and survey actually has, and so here are my networks to import the things into, and each one of these becomes a folder, and there are data files in here, and these are SQL Express, right? And we can open this guy. I'm just doing this to see if there's anything in here already. Okay. Oh, okay. So we've got a XML data file in here. Okay, and I'm going to delete that out of that project just temporarily. All right, because we don't need that inside our survey database. And since it's a XML backup, I can get back to it anytime I want. So I'm just getting rid of an import event. It's going to get rid of anything that was in my drawing and attached to that. So I have an empty survey database. The other thing that's really important about survey, which is kind of, they tell you but they don't, is that you've got not only survey database settings, you've got user settings. And you can import and export these. These are really important and subtly buried away. Where am I looking for all the little bits and pieces? And pretty good idea to export and import, right? Survey user settings. Think of it as your profile for where you are working now. And it's a good idea to save them somewhere know where they are. You could standardize them a bit, but job per job, you may want to change this stuff. And notice, I'm saving them where there's even a place. Where am I saving those? Okay, so I'm using a piece of equipment. Critically important if you're going to make adjustments and all those things, that you go through the little teeny bit of work to look in the manual and adjust the equipment settings. So there's a current piece of equipment, which may vary where the stuff came from. We're using a generic piece of equipment here, since I don't know what the heck he did and I can't adjust it. It's all NEZ that I'm bringing in anyway. The line work processing defaults are pretty important. It says I have a code set path. That's where do I go to look for the database that I'm going to use, and which one I can adjust how Survey interprets the commands without getting into the weeds here, right? That's cool stuff. Also, for the figures, right, which are the result of that line work processing, right? Where's my figure prefix? It happens to be my current project. I got actually multiple ones here, right? So you can have multiple prefixes, right? And this is a fairly basic match to the description keys, set of lines. Remember those ones, right? Over the description keys, it's going to make basic figures, and it's going to throw them on a layer. And then we got a whole bunch of other settings, all of which you may not care about at the moment. But there are a few things you need to check before you hit the button. And if you don't have these settings set up for yourself, Survey can be incredibly confusing because you don't know where stuff's coming from, okay? And why the heck does it find this there? And it operates differently each and every time, and it will save your results in that user settings. So you've got a current set of settings, but are you saving it? If you change it, does it save it? It remembers where you were last time. Okay. So you need to make sure. Now, we can do an import event. Okay, so our survey data, right? Import survey data. And we're going to shoot it into our current database. You can see it's got a coordinate system and a couple other things set up in it. Okay, and now, hey, this looks like, hey, I could use the same file, couldn't I? Oh yeah, that'd be pretty cool. Okay, so here's that topo points one, right? And open with Notepad again. You can see what's in there. And as you can see, it's just pure and simple descriptions. There is nothing other than a little bit of tree scaling going on there, right? Okay, a couple of other little minor notes in there. But there's certainly nothing that could be interpreted as a command going on in that file, right? And we're going to bring that guy in, and it is a PNEZ. Notice it remembered. Wait a minute, you've never been here before. Oh, but this is it's a point file. And what did I do last time? Civil 3D's gotten better at remembering that kind of stuff. All right. Okay. And here's gives you a display of what my results going to look like. Okay. To validate. Where am I going to put it into a network? Let's create a new network, and we're just going to call it points here. And holds points from the how do you spell surveyor? Surveyor. Okay. All right. And so we made a new network. We could have another network, and I might have stuff that related to that, the aerial control and all that kind of stuff. So there are reasons to keep the stuff separated. Okay, and Survey is much better at this than it used to be in LDT, right? In fact, it's not even in the same ballpark here. Okay, and now what are we going to do here? Okay, so it says the file, it remembers this. Notice that Civil 3D is doing everything it can to help you get back to where it was, where it came from, what kind of points. You can even say, hey, I'd like to make all this list of aerial shots, aerial grid setup shots as control points in a network. Okay, these are all non-control points. Okay, you could subdivide that little point group and pull out all the stations, right? And chop that file up if you wanted to, and do some other really interesting things. And there's this little, do you want me to process the line work? That means it's going to generate figures while we do it. And you can do it, you just import it, and we're just going to import it. And notice I'm not going to do anything yet. Okay, so I'm not going to process the line work on purpose, right? I'm just going to throw the data into my survey database. And it's going to chug away, and nothing will happen on my screen because I'm not making a single civil thing in Civil 3D yet. Not a thing. Okay, I've got two networks. I now have a bunch of points in here, and they're all those points, and they're indeed the same points, and their descriptions show up, and there they are, right? So the points are all there, right? Okay, inside my network, the resolve result down here, because it's surveyed, they could be adjusted. We're not adjusting them, they're all NEZ shots, right? Okay, and I'm going to now run against this set of collected data. Okay, I'm going to process the line work, and we're going to, run it against the prefix that I picked before. I'm running against the standard Civil 3D set of commands. Okay, and there are no commands, right, in the data, right? Okay, and am I gonna insert the figures? No, and I'm not gonna insert any points either at this point. I just want to make them. And so still, I have no junk in my drawing, but I got a whole bunch of figures. Wait a minute, how did it do that? Okay, so it found BLDs and bottoms and center lines and EPs. That's because it matched this current set of figures, okay, which says, hey, if you find something that starts as BLD with a 0 after it, make it a figure. Oh, wait a minute. Let's go back up and look at those figures real carefully here for a second. Figures. It find BLD 0. Okay, so it must have found that, and then there are double-digit incrementers used in this file, and you could see it made all the center lines and all those things, but, I don't have anything on my drawing, so we can put them all in there, but, we can actually see, oh, okay, that's what, based on the point order, by the way, how it made the building outline. Okay, wait a minute. Okay, so there's a little piece of one in here. And because there are no command codes to start and end things, right, my figures are pretty crazy. Okay, as you can see, this might be a reasonable figure down here, but because it had no end command, right, remember we're just doing it, I can actually, right click and go to properties up here, okay, and it will zoom to my figure. And so there's my bottom one, and I can actually get to a set of points, and it'll show me where I am, okay, and that's looking pretty good, that's looking pretty good. And you can dock all this stuff if you want, and hopefully you've got two monitors instead of the one I'm forced to show you at a time here, right? And right there, and that might be the end of this figure. So yes, I can break my figure right there. It will make a new one, okay, that actually includes this figure. So I can manually go through and even from the point file, chop up my figures into the bits and pieces and rename them and make a better result. So I can save myself a bunch of drawing time. Okay, so other thing is if I want to put figures in, I could, take, how about center line 01? let's, you know, zoom out, and you can see, okay, so there's two of them. That's a pretty obvious one. So that first piece, which should be pretty easy to find, we got an O2, obviously pretty easy to find those center lines and break up that. Okay, and remember, we can go and see where the breaks are. So, you know, even if I have nothing, right, even if it's just I have no command codes at all, I could still get out of a point file a whole bunch of figure information. It takes me a bit of time to chew it up, but now it's directly still related to that point data, right, and recreatable, editable, malleable. And if we pick things like, okay, so we got TCO1. Oh my goodness. Okay, so the guys use that code all over the place. But you also notice, right? Okay, I've got sections here where they shot, and even though I'm not saying it's on a curve, I can edit my figure. So you can edit this figure and say these 3 points are on a curve and do that sort of stuff. These 3 points are on a curve, and, you know, get better figures. And you can see most of the big, you know, leaps here are obvious and easy to find. Sometimes not quite so subtle as that, but, you know, sometimes a bit of figure editing is better than drawing it all manually. And the figure is and remains dynamically connected to the data. Cool. Okay, so if we have to adjust these points, the guy comes back and says, I blew the datum, oh my God. Okay, you don't have to recreate every single one of those feature lines that you drew. Okay, so figures can be gotten to that way. Hey, and, you know, I don't really care about any of that stuff, right? And let's import a, you know, another little bit more complex file in my last couple of minutes, right? And, you know, in the old days in Survey, you had to have a FBK file. And notice I didn't use an FBK file. Okay, if Survey is going to give me back my memory after it cleans out, right? And while it thinks, let's look at a couple of things. So you got to remember, you got to be all set up in Civil 3D, right? A couple of things about survey points. You can have a point in survey that is not a civil point, okay? And survey points, if they're done from shots and all those things, are the result of perhaps multiple observations, a resolved set, and they are dynamically connected to the data. The COGO point generated from a survey point, right, is still connected to that survey database if the database is open and available. If not, it's pretty much locked down. Okay, you can lock them both as a manual process, right? And survey points can actually be shared, and that's a little bit easier if you've got Vault. If you don't use Vault, you can still share them by a couple other devices, right? Remember the point groups we already talked about and all those sorts of things. A couple of key things. The creation of figures and editing requires an open survey database. If you're just putting them in a drawing, you can open the database read-only and vomit the figures that you have created out of that database, backup or whatever it came from, into any drawing you want, right, directly from the survey database. So if you make the survey database accessible to other users, getting to the primary figures to do that kind of thing, useful device. Okay, and you don't have to have one survey database. You don't have to have one network. So you got a lot of ways to slice and dice up the data and deliver it in different portions and pieces via that technology. We've already seen the results of the process line work one way. Remember, it's the current prefix database and the current line work code set, and I should have, it's also your current equipment if your equipment is going to use adjustments and all those sorts of things. So we should be back here, right? And, you know, we can reset the network just to make sure, right? And we already know it's already all gone, but, you know, get rid of the little shields. Okay, so now we're going to import again, and this command is this command, right click, import survey data. I'm going to go into the same network. Okay, I'm going to use a different point file. And this point file, we can review it. Notice I could have opened it in Excel, right? Oh, and this one does have survey commands. Begin curves, end curves. Ooh, it's got some CPNs, which is start from a point. It's got recall points in here. It's even got some, basic stuff, right, that are effectively gun commands, right, while it was being shot that will, generate for me from a CSV file, no field book, all NEZs, right? And you can also produce this yourself if you want, right? Okay, so we're going to bring that guy in. Okay, and once again, it's PNEZ, it remembers, so I don't have to do it again. And we'll do points, right? And we'll process the line work while we go in this time, okay? And we're not going to import, we're not going to do any offset identifiers. Notice lots of subtleties in there, right? And it's going to generate away, and it's going to process line work, and I'll end up with a whole giant list of figures, right? Okay. Once again, they look very similar, but hey, okay, there's one, there's two, there's one. Okay, so there are a bunch of little teeny bits and pieces of the building shot at different times, right, from different setup locations, right, with ends and beginnings. So I end up with a lot more little bits and pieces, which sure as heck makes things putting together a little bit easier. Let's, take a look at some of those bottoms. Okay, so, some of those little bits and pieces still looking better, right? Let's take a look at, what was that TC1 that we looked at before? Okay, there's flow line. We got sidewalks. Ooh, hey, cool. Okay, so you got whole sidewalks now. There's my TC1 figure, right? And now I get the little bits and pieces, right, without them, with all the starts and ends and the curve data, right? Done. Okay, so, well, there are a couple of things you can do here that really can help you manufacture things, right, from the figures and getting them into surfaces. A couple of little tricks here. I can make a new figure group, and, we can just go call this TBC, right? I'll skip the, and say, let's just grab all the ones just to keep this fairly simple and quick for you, right? And I can make all the top back curbs just by saying yes and no. There is no, unfortunately, any filtering commands, right? So I can take the ones, and we could probably get the twos in here too, which are the other side of the street. And we want to get all the little connect to a point. That's what CP means, right? Okay, we just got the ones and twos in there. Okay, and now that I got that survey group, I got some nifty things. I can just put those in my drawing. And now these are figures. And when I grab them, it goes, hey, that's a figure. And now, since it's the back of curb, right, and then there's my survey figure properties, right, are the editing box, and you can see the curves are interpreted, right. It will zoom you to it. You can see where it started. We actually started this thing on a curve, went all the way around on the one I happened to select, right. Okay, goes up, there's another curve, and the end curve and begin curve, right? And notice you can do some marvelous things like reverse this and turn it up and down, and oops, that one was out of order and shot wrong. And you can fix this, right, inside the survey database independently of the input data. And you can actually edit the input data separately from the resolved. So you got a lot of flexibility there in terms of getting things right. Notice we got those edit geometry boxes here. So now if, I wanted that edit geometry, and I remember that stepped offset command. Okay, so we can create a stepped offset distance. You know, we're going to go 0.5, it's a 6-inch curve, right? And we're going to go on this side, and the elevation difference is going to be 0. Okay, and what did I end up with? There was my original figure, and guess what I ended up with? A feature line. Ta-da. Okay, so could I make this feature line into a figure? Wait a minute. Okay, so there's my feature line, and if I went to here and I wanted to create, edit figures, modify figures, create a figure from an object. Okay. Okay, so I'm going to create a figure and we're going to give her a name, you know, TFC01, right? And current figures you associate to the vertices now. Okay, so okay, and well, it doesn't appear to. Okay, okay. There's that guy, and where's that? Create figure interactively. Name for the new figure, TFC01. Okay, that's the one I want. That's the one I want. And notice every time I pick, it says, I don't know what the heck that is. Okay, so it doesn't like the feature line. Okay, little trick. Explode. Okay, and figures, create a figure interactively, name of the figure, TFC01, say okay, and I want that, pick, pick, pick. Does it make my figure? Did I end up with A, B, L, C, F, T, whoops, that was TBs, TBs. Oh, wait a minute. All right. So yes, you can automatically be aware that you may not get feedback, right? That it actually did what you thought, right? Inside survey right now, it kind of lies to you and says, which one? So let's get rid of one of them. Can you get rid of that guy? And notice we're interactively acting on the data outside of the drawing, right? Okay. And so we got to remember to save it in the database. Okay. And TF, oh, there's TFC. And so now, hey, now it would help to have another figure group called TFC, right? And once again, we can, you know, what are the properties of it, right? Okay. And hey, this looks very similar. Notice, right? That actually came from the break line. Notice it was not connected to a point number, right? But we still retain all the geometry that came from the figure. Cool, right? Okay, so handy new thing, works real well in 12. You just don't get the right appearingly feedback out of the command line right now. So that was one little thing that, oh, it really does make them. Okay, all right. Okay, so little bit of feature line figure interaction and how to get it back to be a new figure. So now all the figures, right? If I go up here and remove all the figures from my drawing, yes, right? What the heck is that? You know, my exploded feature line, right? Okay, and how about let's put them all in the drawing. I'll take all my figures and show you that there's a, you know, fairly large complex set of figures that came out of that one little CSV file, and my top face of curb, right? Comes in and remembered it, and it's in my survey database now, okay? And once again, could identify this? Okay, all right. So think fairly covered things, right, in a lot of depth here. So we learned some things about figures and feature lines today, right? And can we massage figures into feature lines? That was the opposite side of the question. Can we take feature lines and massage them into figures? Ooh, we found out that was true as well, right? And we haven't covered, oh, hey, I want to add stuff into my surface that I made before. And so we're going to wrap up with that final little process. You know, I've got all these figures, and if I want the figures to be in my surface, remember I do have a surface going on here over in my prospector. I do have a surface, right? Okay, so I do have a surface that I've added, okay, and it has not have any break lines. I'd like to add all of these figures, right, okay, into my database. And that included my newly made top face of curve, right? So I go back over to survey and I can grab the figures and I can do these all at once, okay? So I'm going to do that, right? Oh, okay, and it's going to say, do you want to add them all, right? And if the figure prefix database said make a break line out of this, right? Okay, so notice my wetlands didn't get made into a break line. Okay, okay, I have a pool here, so that's the edge of my pond, right? Okay, so check. Or, you know, hey, I can just take the building ones for now, and I might and probably do want to divide these up into bite-sized pieces, right? So I'm going to cancel out of there for 1 sec and want you to know that I can create break lines from a named figure group. Okay, so you can categorize, subdivide, and do all that stuff. We're just going to grab this and go back and create break lines, add them all in one big pile. Already know my wetlands wasn't in there. Uncheck everything, uncheck everything, right? Okay, you know, I want to make sure everything is checked here. Okay, and you got to watch that box, checked and unchecked. Is that really what's going on here? Any surface you want, make a new surface right there. Okay, and add those in there, and this makes a nasty, big, huge, nasty pile. All break lines, all figures from SurveyDB, right? Okay, what kind of break line do you want it to be? Do you want to weed it? Ooh, do you want to buff it up? Okay, so a couple of things. My standard spec and station offset was 24 feet. Okay, I want to supplement, so it should, you know, even things out, clean things up. It's not going to really rip things out too much by a 4-inch angular and a 1 foot mid-ordinate. Okay, okay, so it'd be a standardized way to normalize, right, the data as it comes out. Okay, based on station and offset stuff, right? And guess what? We will have points and other stuff that don't get added, or why? Because there's data that crosses, okay? All the other kinds of things, and you know, since it's Civil 3D, we now have, you know, in terms of my surface here, right? And my surface is a real life thing, and notice my contours all now tweak, right, around my roadway stuff, right, in my roadway shots. Okay, so things are looking a little more reasonable, right? We can, you know, edit the surface, smooth it out, do all kinds of all that typical stuff, and we got crossing break line resolution. Okay, so you can pick, you know, specify the type, and notice we can go all the way back down into the command line, all the way back into the survey database to resolve crossing conflicts. We can do it at the figure level or just in our current surface level, right? A couple of words of warning, takes much longer to go back into the database, right? Because you got that double connection than the current figures that you got in your drawing or the surface. So hey, let's just process the current figures, and it will generate none. Hey, clean survey never happens, right? Okay, so if we started to do all those offsets and make all the offsets, we'd probably end up with a few. But this is a fairly clean, well shot job, right? Okay, without a bunch of crossings. Cool, right? Of course, it was also cleaned up to do just that. So we now have no crossing break lines. Hey, success and victory, got a better surface, need a boundary, need some more stuff, but we got from our figures and feature lines, and remember, hey, we took that feature line, made the tap back curb, hey, we can make flow lines, do all that kind of stuff, and we could do that a lot easier in 2012.